Bitcoin, the energy that backs Bitcoin is not the potential force of a gun or the force of a gun itself. What backs Bitcoin is essentially the electricity. You have at the base level, and this is what Henry Ford predicted, and Tesla and others. They predict this, looking forward at the information age. They predicted that eventually we'd be able to convert the natural wealth of the world into a form of energy, and then that energy would be able to be communicated, turned into information. That information should be able to be communicated throughout the world virtually
Yeah.
instantly. And then we'd have a form of money that was backed by that. Ford predicted that this new kind of money, this new kind of thinking would be the largest factories, the largest power plants in the world. Tesla said that it would, reduce wars or end wars, and
Yeah.
Ford said the same thing. And that's basically what we have. We've had this revolution the last century or so where now we can turn natural wealth, coal, solar, nuclear, whatever, into electricity, so like a base layer. And on
Mhm.
top of that, we can turn that electricity into computing power, like we're talking right now
Mhm.
via the computer, ones and zeros. We're converting electricity. My computer's plugged into the wall right here. Some power plant's turning some coal somewhere into electricity. That electricity is being turned into information. And then on top of that, we're communicating that information over the internet.
Mhm.
And now finally on top of that, we have this Bitcoin thing, this immutable scarcity thing that's backed by the electricity and the computational power
Mhm.
behind it. And so what's to your joke earlier about how people that criticize Bitcoiners like, oh, it's just game theory. It's like, yeah, it is.
Mhm.
The political currency unit regime has to get worse. There is no scenario in which it gets better because if your incentive structure is bigger gun diplomacy of who has the biggest gun,
Mhm.
like it's just a matter of time until another gun appears and it gets bigger or yours gets
Mhm.
smaller or however the ratio changes. Nothing is static. Nothing is static in the world. So eventually that paradigm is going to change. And when we can't communicate with our constitution, when we can't communicate with our political reasoning, we have to default to the level below. What's the level below?
Mhm. Raw
A
power.
barrel's, yeah, raw
Yeah.
power. And the
Yeah.
best way to exert that raw power is not to show up with 100 tons of gold. The better form of raw power is a gun. And so, yeah, political currency systems have to decline. And we're seeing that
Yeah.
the system begins to cannibalize itself as we are incentivized away from productivity and towards management. We tax ourselves to death and we manipulate ourselves exponentially more. And as that productivity shrinks, aka the energy to be able to feed the gun shrinks, we emphasize use on the gun. We
Yes.
have more proxy wars, we have more influence. I mean, that's what Russia's doing right now. Their demographics are um, on decline, and they have various problems of their own, and they've basically invaded Ukraine in an attempt to regain that influence. And then, of course, we cut them out from SWIFT and everything like that. We're weaponizing our currency, and
Yeah.
a political currency whose power is the political energy of the state, weaponizing that power against other states. They are undermining their own currency, and
Right.
so it's not a speculation that the dollar has to get worse and that Bitcoin's going to overtake it. Like
Mm.
in a very real sense, if you understand the game theory, it's inevitable.
Yeah.
And people say, what happens when the government bans Bitcoin? They're like, they will. they,
Yeah.
they will ban it. But to use the metaphor of the ships earlier, that's not saying that the captain of the Titanic is going to ban lifeboats. It, it's
Right. Mhm.
it's like they're going to encage you on the ship as it goes down. They're not
Yeah.
going to ban Bitcoin and then everyone will cheer and kumbaya and we'll all buy bonds and fund the government. It's like, no,
Mm.
they'll stop you from buying Bitcoin because if you're playing a game of chess and there is no more good move for you, the only good move is to stop the freedom of movement. Stop the people from being able to move on the ship because they're just going to choose a lifeboat every single time. Stop
Right.
the chess pieces from being able to move. So anyway, I've gone a long rant there, but the point of the game theory here is that if Bitcoin is this algorithm that cuts humans out of the loop, it is inherently better than an incentive structure that requires humans, that is also backed by political promises and the barrel of a gun. And that's not some anti-status point. That's just the reality of that's how
Yeah.
it's going to happen. And that's why it's important for people to get off zero. Because if you don't, like, either you will buy Bitcoin or the longer you wait to buy Bitcoin, the probability goes up that you will not be able to buy Bitcoin.
Mhm.
And that's not a problem with Bitcoin. As some people hearing that would think that's a problem with Bitcoin. That's a problem with your current system.
Yeah.
but it's going to cannibalize itself either way. It's just thankfully we have this lifeboat now to
Yeah.
counteract that.
And it's a problem for you if you don't have access to the lifeboat when the lifeboats become more scarce or the access is restricted. And I think it was Mao that said all political power emanates from the barrel of a gun. And so it is interesting. Again, it's almost the way I think about this typically is we, life, but we specifically humans, we're organisms that are constantly responding to incentives, right? That's largely determining our behavior. Um, Obviously, it's not a deterministic relationship, but observed over the broadest patterns of how humans move and organize themselves, it's damn near deterministic, right? People are going to do whatever's profitable for them. And so just by, I guess, Bitcoin just radically lowering the cost of defending your purchasing power. Like we don't need the US military and aircraft carriers and all of these things to preserve the integrity of the US dollar. We don't have to be a global imperialist. You can just have this very simple wheel-like technology that makes it very cheap to protect your purchasing power from theft, debasement, dilution. And so all of a sudden, game theoretically, the gun becomes much less useful, right? Because you can't steal with it. You can't use it to steal from others or impose the use of a national currency when people have recourse to this lifeboat we call Bitcoin.
I'm glad that you're taking the time to learn about Bitcoin, learn about Bitcoin's potential future value, both in terms of political currency units and on society as a whole. And I'm really glad that you're taking the effort to study and educate yourself about Bitcoin. However, I must make this message incredibly clear. If you are learning about Bitcoin, you must begin also learning about self-custody and taking possession of your own keys. This is really, really important. You can watch as many YouTube videos as you want, talking about how Bitcoin is going to skyrocket in fiat price and how the number is going to go up. You can talk about that all you want. You can daydream about this kind of vertical spike action for Bitcoin. You can daydream about this all you want. But my encouragement to you is that this is not a meme. This is not something to be taken lightly. We can think that this is a good thing, and it is a good thing ultimately for Bitcoin's long-term adoption, but this is real. Okay, this really happens in countries. It may not happen in your country for some time. It may happen in a stair-step fashion, but this is not a meme. This is not a joke. And so, therefore, you need to take self-custody really, really seriously. Okay. I work full-time in self-custody solutions for people. I help people set up their multi-sig vaults. I help people set up their estate plans. I help people with a collaborative custody partnership and collaborative custody models. Okay. This is a chart of the interest we have at the Bitcoin Advisor, the company I work at. Okay. This is not me personally. This is the whole company. We've been in business 7 years. Not a single client of ours has ever lost a single sat. Okay. We have a good number of clients, and this is our demand. My point in showing you this chart, my point in showing you this message right now is that it is increasingly urgent, increasingly important that you begin taking self-custody very seriously. I'm telling you, I'm on the inside of this all day, every day, 6 days a week, and demand for self-custody is skyrocketing, okay? The kinds of clients we have, the number of clients we have, the conviction in the clients we have, it is only going up, okay? And people are booking meetings with me weeks, okay, in advance. In some cases, over a month in advance. And we are in bear market, okay? This chart right here is from October 2023. Okay, like incredible low interest globally in Bitcoin, and our demand is still skyrocketing, it's still spiking. And my encouragement is that if we have a bull run, if we have parabolic spikes such as this, where Bitcoin goes rapidly upwards in terms of price, if we have these periods of time, okay, transaction fees are going to spike. Okay, exchanges are going to halt withdrawals. Okay, people are going to panic. They're going to smash buy any price. Okay, it's going to be increasingly difficult to have any time with people to help you in your self-custody setups. So first and foremost, whatever you do, whether you work with me at the Bitcoin Advisor, whether you go somewhere else, whether you figure it out on your own, whatever the case, please start figuring out self-custody, hot wallets, cold wallets, cold wallets, single sig, multi-sig, whatever you do, just start figuring it out now, because I'm increasingly alarmed by the number of Bitcoiners that do not have self-custody. So please, if you have any Bitcoin self-custody, but especially if you have a large amount of Bitcoin in self-custody, please start taking this stuff seriously, because it's only going to be increasingly important in the future. And so, if you'd like to work with me, if you'd like to hear my opinions, perspectives, and ideas on this topic, you can find me at the Bitcoin Advisor. This is precisely why I work at the Bitcoin Advisor, because I believe this is such an important topic here, okay? You can find me there. You can have expert guidance on how to self-custody Bitcoin, to buy, secure, and store it properly for the long term. We can have tailored strategies for you, what your long-term vision is, both for yourself, your own individual future, your retirement, and for your future generations as well. Again, multi-sig vaults, estate plans, all these things for you. Okay, you can just book a free meeting with me here and the link down below in the description. Again, the first consultation is completely free, where we can talk about your priorities and see if there's a value add both for you and for the Bitcoin advisor as well. And again, our goal is to help you have generational wealth for you and your loved ones and your children without losing sleep. Okay. And that's why not only do you get a free initial consultation, but you have dozens and dozens of pages of education about multi-sig, self-custody, how to store your Bitcoin properly, things to avoid, things to pursue. Okay. Again, dozens and dozens of pages of free education for you to be learning about this increasingly important, increasingly urgent topic. Okay. And then you can learn further about the Bitcoin advisor and why we provide much more value for half the cost of our competitors. You can learn about all this and more in that link in the description, where you can book a free consultation with me at the Bitcoin advisor. So again, whatever you do, whether you work with me at the Bitcoin advisor or you try to figure out on your own, please just start taking action now. Because in a couple of years, higher and higher net worth people are going to be entering the space and demanding self-custody. Okay, more and more companies, more and more charities, more and more pension funds, more and more churches, all these things, all these groups of people, all these entities are going to be coming into Bitcoin very quickly, and they'll be willing to pay the transaction fees. They'll be willing to pay whatever fiat price and get for their sats. They'll be willing to do the self-custody as fast as possible. And so my encouragement to you, again, I'm glad you're enjoying these videos. I really appreciate you subscribing and commenting, being a part of these videos and increasing your Bitcoin education. But please, please, please do not stop at the end of this video. Immediately after you watch the end of this video, please start taking your self-custody seriously, whether that's with me at the Bitcoin advisor, again, link in the description, or it's on your own. Whatever the case, please just do it. Thank you.
Game theoretically, we would expect politics and other forms of organized violence and coercion to just decline, right? They're less profitable activities for humans. And that is a radical thought, because all of a sudden statism itself is called into question. It's like, what does that world look like on a Bitcoin standard? Do we have states? If we do, they're obviously going to be less coercive, because coercion is not as profitable. So even if they wanted to be coercive, they couldn't fund the coercion as adequately as they do today. So yeah, your head almost explodes when you get into the game theory aspects of Bitcoin.
It really does. And for me, it's also recognizing that it's not a matter of intelligence. You know, if we go back to the bees, it's like, okay, you have the abstract power being the colors on their bodies. You know, that's like the abstract communication. The same way we have the Constitution or piece of paper, and the stinger is the gun, the stinger is the barrel. So, and it's like, if you gave bees that option of bees the ability to defend their hive in a non-violent manner, eventually beehives would trend towards that. You know, because if you can get rid of the bear without having your own bees die as they sting the bear, it's like, of course you're going to choose that. And so, you know, that's the funny thing, that it's not like Bitcoin causes humans to be more intelligent, or whatever, per se. It's just that it negates the need for it. Yeah. And I think it was Elon Musk, or I think, actually, no, I think it was Elon Musk quoting someone else. But there's a quote that the best system in engineering is the one that's not required. You know, like the thing that's redundant. And I think that's really what we're looking at here, that Bitcoin makes the redundancy of the barrel of a gun apparent, and it just isn't useful anymore.
Right. Yeah, which is super exciting, right? It's like, people always have talked about world peace, right? Like, oh, what all the Miss Universes, what do they say they want? What's one thing you could do for the world? It's like world peace. Obviously, I mean, it's a utopic thing. We'll never get there, but it seems like the one practical engineering solution we can implement is just make coercion, compulsion, violence less profitable and therefore less prevalent. I can't think of anything else we can do about that. So Bitcoin is a radical step in that direction. And we've had other steps in that direction, right? You mentioned the Constitution, the ideals of life, liberty, property. You could argue, you know, democracy to some extent, liberal democracy has contributed as a step in that direction, although there's arguments for and against, but it's very fascinating to look at it through that lens. So this is a theme that has come up for you in a lot of your interviews, which segues nicely from this point, that we have less in common now with the future than we do with the past due to this radical technological advancement.